Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Saraswati Namastubhyam
नमस्तुभ्यं वरदे कामरूपिणी
Yat
विद्यारम्भं करिष्यामि सिद्धिर्भवतु मे सदा
Sadashivasamaram
सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्
Om
ॐ
Sahana Bhavat
सहना भवतु
Saha
सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः।
Yes. So welcome everyone. And again, I invite you, whoever is comfortable, to turn on their videos. It helps me feel like I'm talking to someone and not myself. And thanks to Vicky G for turning on, and Divya and Sujit. Thank you so much. Welcome. Happy to see all of you here. I see a lot of familiar faces and some new faces. I think some of you might be completely new to Vedanta Amritam or Vedanta, I'm not sure. So I'll give a brief overview anyway. I'm Spandana, as you can see. And s- I, since COVID, when I was very blessed to get locked down with my Acharya Raviji, since then I've been living up here in the mountains in a village in Himachal. I'm quite dedicated to my sadhana the last few years, and I've also been now I'm a women's coach and a menstruality mentor. So very briefly about me, my direct teacher is Acharya Ravi Ishwaran, and I've also studied a lot with the recordings of Swami Paramarthananda, who's Raviji's teacher. We all belong to the lineage rolling up to Swami Dayananda. And of course, further up the line is Adi Shankaracharya. So we're a parampara, a lineage of students and teachers. Raviji has been teaching online for, I think, close to 15 years now, trying to make this wealth of information available to all seekers across the world. That's why we have these regular online classes. What we're calling it Vedanta Amritam. And as you can see, we have, if you had been to the webpage, we have several texts that we regularly do. It is supposed to be a systematic, long-term study, right? And what do we teach? We teach Advaita Vedanta. Now, what is Vedanta? Right? Vedas are the scriptures from India, like which are at least 5,000 years old, is the most conservative estimate. And initially they were given orally, and then they started being written down. The knowledge in the Vedas itself is timeless. It's said to be apurusheya, which means it is not a product of human intellect. Right? It is in the prayer when we said Sada Shiva Samarambham, the teaching came from Lord Shiva itself. And Asmadacharya, sorry, Sadashiva Smarambam, then we say Shankaracharya, who came in the middle, and my own Acharya, who came in the end. So this knowledge, this timeless knowledge has been flowing through the lineage. It was always there. And The Vedas itself consists of everything, right? People have different goals as humans. We pursue wealth, we pursue relationships, we pursue pleasure, we pursue right doing, dharma. And whatever your goals might be, the Vedas have a solution for that. There is a lot of rituals you could do to achieve any of the goals that you have. And when you start asking the deeper questions like, who am I? Who's God? What is this world? What is the purpose of this life? Then all these answers are to be found in Vedanta, which means the end of the Vedas, and in terms of where the knowledge appears and also it being the highest knowledge that there is. That's Vedanta. And when we say the same Vedas have been interpreted in several ways. So Adi Shankaracharya, who's the proponent of the structure of Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta as it exists today, wrote numerous commentaries establishing the view of Advaita, which is non-duality. Very simply put, it's the vision that me, any creator, the world, they're all one and the same. There is no separateness which exists at all. I am the same as the creator and this world, and I am the not form, but I'm the formless of consciousness itself. That is Advaita. Any questions for anyone who might be new if I went a bit fast through all that? Lovely. And as I say, Adi Shankaracharya was the proponent of this, and he wrote several commentaries, and a traditional Vedanta student today studies or listens to, I will explain the process, what we call the Prasthanatrayam mainly, which is primarily the Bhagavad Gita, the 10 Upanishads that Adi Shankaracharya commented on, and Brahma Sutras at a later stage. And now, where does Upadesa Saram fit into all this? It's not exactly any of these. It's something we call a Prakarna Grantha, which is commentaries or texts written by more modern acharyas, more recent acharyas, let's say, and who tried to condense all the information, all the knowledge which exists in Vedanta in singular texts. Some Prakarna Granthas talk about one aspect of this knowledge. It could be the discernment between the seer and what is seen. And some other Prakarna Granthas, like Upadesa Saram, deal with the entire comprehensive structure of this knowledge, which is why this particular text is so special, because it deals with the entire scope of what this knowledge is about and will give you a great introduction. And even if you're a seasoned student, it's always useful to come back to these overviews and learn from that and learn to know where I should focus my attention right now. A brief about Ramana Maharishi, who's the author of this text. So unlike the Vedas itself, which are Aporishaya, the Bhagavad Gita and Prakarna Granthas like this have authors. And this was written by Ramana Maharishi. Many of you are probably familiar with the name, and probably many of you have been to Tiruvannamalai, which has his ashram. And I know some of you are also here are also very devout followers of Ramana Maharishi. So I hope expounding on this text written by him will be very meaningful to you. So Ramana Maharishi was born in a Tamil family, and there was nothing particularly notable to be said about his childhood, except at the age of 16, he is said to have had spontaneous realization. And soon after, he left Madurai, where he was living with his uncle, and went to Tiruvannamalai because Arunachala was calling to him. Arunachala, this mountain in the middle of Tiruvannamalai, which he saw as a living lingam of Shiva. And he spent many years meditating there in a cave because even though someone might have a spontaneous realization, that for it to be firm, for that knowledge to be completely assimilated, it often requires more time. And it is said for the first 11 years, he did not speak at all. Now, having heard this, and also knowing that some of you are Ramana devotees, knowing that he mostly talked about self-inquiry, asking, who am I? Right? So when Ramana himself had this spontaneous realization, why should you be studying this text? Why should you be doing this long-term systematic study of the scriptures? It sounds maybe a bit dry compared to this yogi sitting in the caves meditating. Would that be not the way to go for self-realization? What are we doing studying all these Sanskrit texts and looking at translations and commentaries? Why do you think? Would anyone like to answer? So I won't put anyone on the spot. Yeah, Himanshu, you would like to give it a try?
Uh, Spandanji, from my limited understanding, having started studying a bit of Vedant and a bit of other things, I think what is very important is whether it is Jnana Marg or it is Bhakti Marg or Karma Marg, the idea is to turn inwards and to have that realization. So whether you do it with scriptures or whether the idea is basically you have to purify your mind. So once it's completely pure, then only you're able to see the truth, which is always present. So how it happened for Ramana Maharishi, or how it happened for the 10th man story, or how it happens for so many others, that moment. So you build your knowledge, or you do that with action, with karma, do that with bhakti, devotion. The ultimate thing is it happens only when you are totally pure inside. So probably for some of us who are here, the knowledge path attracts more because it satisfies our curiosity, it gives answers, and going in detail and studying all the text the way they have been prescribed by the acharyas, it helps us go in a process and understand the holistic thing, and then probably have that realization in
Beautiful.
that moment.
Very comprehensive answer. So very well said. Simply put, not all of us, most of us are not Ramana Maharishi. Ramana Maharishi was a very special being with a very, very high level of spiritual maturity, of this ripeness, which was likely result of lifetimes of sadhana. And we don't know what all he was exposed to in his previous lifetime. Most likely he did come to some kind of knowledge. Most likely he did a lot of spiritual sadhana for that readiness, for this realization to happen and for it to take root. And he himself never said that that is the path for everyone. In fact, this text that he wrote, Upadesa Saram, the first part of it deals extensively with all the other sadhanas, which we call the preparatory sadhanas. Or you can think of it as, so it deals with upasana, meditation. It deals with karma yoga, bhakti yoga, the path of devotion. And all these are very necessary for preparing the mind, as Himanshu very rightly said, for what we call chitta shuddhi, purity of the mind. Because only when this purity of the mind is there, that the knowledge can take root. So the first half of this text, even Ramana Maharishi dedicated to all the preparatory sadhanas. And the second half of the text, he talks about the actual knowledge, the actual self-inquiry into who am I. So the first part can be considered jnana yogyata, the eligibility for receiving this knowledge. And the second part can be understood as the jnana yoga portion, where the knowledge itself of who am I is given. So both new students and the ones who've been with us for many, many years would do well to remember that we cannot exclude jnana yogyata, all the preparatory sadhanas, at the expense of jnana yoga, the knowledge. Because without the first, the second will definitely fail. And so it's important to always keep a hang of both. And over time, you will know where are you in your spiritual journey and what kind of sadhana do you need. If you don't know, you can go back to your whoever is your long-term acharya and always ask for a private counsel and come up with a sadhana for yourself, right? And so why do Vedas talk about all these different aspects? Why is there so much ritualistic aspect? So the first part, one is because we said, as we said, they help prepare the mind. And people have the goals that they have. So you're all sitting in this Vedanta class. Some of you have been here for many, many years. So it would be safe to assume that you all have some kind of inquiry. Inquiry is very common. So humans always have these questions about everything that they see around us. The less earlier in your journey, you might have more, questions about the things around you. What should I do for work? How do I make more money? How do I fulfill all these different desires that I have? And while you're focused on that, there is no point someone talking about the highest knowledge. So the Vedas will tell you how to pursue any of these goals that you have. If you want wealth, they will tell you how to do a ritual for Goddess Lakshmi. If you want a son, they will give you a ritual for having a son. It's just that they're asking you that by giving you these portions, they're saying that they're also helping you do it in a dharmic way, in a way where you're also purifying yourself and you're also getting some spiritual benefit. So this purity of the mind can be thought of as this spiritual benefit. For many people, this is a byproduct, a secondary goal. And as more maturity comes in, that soon becomes the primary goal. So that's when you're focused on moksha, on realizing yourself. And that's when Vedanta will completely make sense to you. And that's when you will come sit in a Vedanta class. Of course, most of you will probably also have other worldly goals, and that's fine. And you don't need to give up any of those goals. You don't need to give up what you're doing in the world. Keep doing it in a way where you're also gaining this purity of mind at the same time. And keep checking in with yourself. What are my own goals that I want for myself? Not what society tells me I should have, not what I was preconditioned with. What do I value? And am I spending enough time? Am I spending enough resources in that pursuit? So we're often conditioned to think of resources as money, right? So we sacrifice so much time in pursuit of this money, which is important. It's good to have a healthy relationship with money so you're not left wanting or asking someone else for it. However, depending on your own goals, check how are you allocating your resources. So think of, expand your definition of resources and think of it also as your time, energy, peace of mind. Are you allocating all these in the appropriate way, which match your own determined goals? Yes. Any questions before we move ahead? So I'll briefly tell you about the story of how Upadesa Saram came to be. Right? Like most of the texts written by Ramana Maharishi, he wrote this text also on the request of a disciple, Sri Murugana. And Ramana Maharishi himself did not speak much, except when directly asked some questions. Then he always spoke out of love to the question of the devotee. So Sri Murugana was quite an esteemed poet in his own right, a Tamil poet. And he was writing this Tamil epic based on the Puranas, the Shiva Puranas. So he was writing about the glories of Lord Shiva that is mentioned in the Puranas in poetic format. And there is one particular story in this which talks about Lord Shiva coming on earth as a Vedanta guru. Right? Of course, remember, this is Puranas, which means they're stories, not what necessarily happened. So, and Lord Shiva was moved to come down to earth to teach because of the set of rishis, aesthetics, who were Purva Mimamsis, or you can call them, they were also known as Karmakandis. So Purva Mimamsa or Karmakand are these special, very unique set of philosophers who believe in Vedas as Pramanam. They believe the Vedas to be true, but mostly the ritualistic part. Somehow they caught up in the ritualistic part. And they believe that the Vedas are eternal, that there is no Ishvara, that there is no creator, and doing rituals can give them everything that it can help them fulfill all the goals that they have, including moksha, including reaching an eternal heaven, a bit like what the Christians believe. And so they're constantly doing a lot of yajnas. They were quite evolved rishis, so they had quite a few siddhis, special powers already they could do, but they wanted even more. So they were planning this huge yajna in order to gain more of their desires, and they were preparing for this yajna. So irrespective of what they believe, they were doing intense tapas, and Lord Shiva felt they must be rewarded for their tapas, but not in the way that they're asking, but by being shown that they're being led astray by focusing so much on the rituals. So all these rishis are in the Yajna preparing for this huge yajna. And all their wives are at home also in preparation for this yajna. And Lord Shiva takes the aid of Lord Vishnu, they're both good buddies, to help him come down to earth and teach these rishis a lesson. So they both come down. Lord Shiva takes the form of this really handsome bhikshu, a monk, and Lord Vishnu takes the form of Mohini, this enchantingly beautiful woman. Lord Vishnu as Mohini comes to the Yagnashala where all the rishis are and starts singing. And all the rishis are completely enchanted by this beautiful woman in this enchanting voice, and they start following her. And in the meantime, Lord Shiva goes in the form of this handsome bhikshu to where the wives were, and they all instantly fall in love with him and start following him. Right. And after a while, the rishis, having lost track of this beautiful woman, they realize, oh no, we've been distracted. They feel obviously very ashamed that they're these big spiritual people and how can they be distracted by a woman? So feeling quite embarrassed. And before anyone else can find out what happened, they quickly come back. And on coming back, they realize that all their wives are missing. So they start searching for the wives. And because, as I mentioned, some of them have these special powers. So they, with the clairvoyance, they check, one of them finds out what happened, that they all went to after this bhikshu. So they go to the forest again to find their wives, and they find them and the bhikshu. And of course, they're completely enraged by this young man who lured away their wives. So they want to destroy him. In a fit of rage, they manifest several weapons. They manifest a tiger and a snake. But none of them have any effect on this bhikshu. None of their weapons have any effect. At the end of it, the bhikshu is wearing the tiger's skin around his waist and the snake around his neck. And after trying everything they could, they realized that this is no ordinary man, but a special being. So with humility, they fall down on his feet and ask to know who he is and to ask him to guide them. So Lord Shiva then takes his form and proceeds to give this self-knowledge, which he came down to give them. Now, when the poet Murugana came to this part of the story, till then he had written quite a bit already in a particular meter. When he came to the story of the actual teaching of the self-knowledge, he thought, why should I write this when Bhagavan Maharishi is right here? It would be better coming from his words. So he comes to Ramana and requests him to write. And Ramana Maharishi obliges him by giving 30 verses on this knowledge. So that's the story of how Upadesa Saram came to be. And now, like I've mentioned, Ramana Maharishi himself never said that this self-inquiry is the path for everyone. And while he did not formally study Vedanta himself under a guru in this lifetime, after his realization, many scholars and people would come to him, bringing him books on the Upanishads and so on. And he found it to be a direct expression of his own realization. He would often read quotes from the Upanishads and say, this speaks to my experience. And he himself suggested to his seekers when asked that for many people, the path of, there are different sadhanas that one must do. Some require, many still require all these preparatory sadhanas of karma yoga, bhakti, and upasana, and to achieve this jnana yogyata. And it is very useful for many to have this systematic jnana yoga path of what we call shravanam, mananam, and nididhyasanam. So in the first stage of receiving this knowledge, shravanam, you listen to the knowledge, right? You receive this knowledge, and this will answer all the questions that you have. So in order to transcend who I think myself to be right now, so a lot of people do this inquiry of who am I, that Ramana Maharishi said. But initially, when people try to inquire, who am I, they're thinking of this self, they're inquiring into this self. And that might not lead you to the answer without any guidance. So this first stage of Shravanam will answer all your questions about who am I really, right? What are all the things I'm not, like the body, mind? These are not me. I'm something beyond that. Who's that? And we also have a lot of questions about the world around us. What is this world we see? How did it come into manifestation? And what will happen to the world? And because the world is an intelligent creation, our experience dictates that there must be an intelligent creator. If you see a watch, you know there was a watchmaker. So whenever we see something very intelligent, as the world is, right? If you think of the thousands, the tens of thousands of natural laws which hold it in place. If we were just a little bit closer to the sun, we would all be toast. If the orbit was a bit further away, we would all freeze. If there was not just enough gravity, we would all be floating in air. There's so many of these natural laws which allow this world to function. So it's natural for all of us to assume that there is an intelligent creator for this intelligent creation. We all have questions which can primarily be split into three things: the jiva, myself, Jagat, the world around me, and Ishvara, whoever this creator or intelligence might be which created all this. And Vedanta answers all these three questions. Any questions? So, as I mentioned, Upadesa Saram is very comprehensive, talking about both the Purva Veda part, the first part of the Vedas, but only in the context of, because Vedas also talk about Ayurveda, which is to do with health. They will talk about mathematics, grammary, and all that. So as a spiritual seeker, that's not in the scope of what we need to know right now. But there is the first part of the Vedas also talk about how to get the eligibility to receive this knowledge. So we will cover that part of the Purva Vedas, just the part which deals with spiritual eligibility, and Vedanta, which deals with the actual knowledge. Because of its comprehensive nature, Swami Dayananda, whose lineage we belong to, whose ashram is in Rishikesh, he's passed away now. They still run long-term Vedantic courses of 3 years and so on. He often taught this as the second text. The first one being Tattvabodha, which many of you here have studied or are currently studying. And the second one, often he taught Upadesa Saram. And yes, Now, so let's get into the text itself. Does everyone have the PDF that I shared? Of the text. If you have it, you can open it. And I will chant and you can repeat after me. Karturagneya prapyate phalam.
Karturagneya prapyate phalam.
Karma kim param karma tajjadam.
Karma kim phalam karma tajjatam.
Don't be shy. Sorry, I meant to mute you all and I muted myself. So don't be shy, do chant. I'm not the most musical myself, but yeah, it helps to know these Sanskrit words over time, and you don't need to really study Sanskrit, you will get to know a lot of these words. The Vedas itself are in Sanskrit and many kind of abstract Sanskrit, and hence you need acharyas of the lineage to translate it and tell you the teaching. And over time, you'll find that there are many words in Sanskrit which just cannot be translated into English, at least not in one word, you know? So we say Ishvara, God, but we all have different meanings of what God is based on our understanding, right? You could say, who am I? I'm trying to realize myself as the ultimate aim of Vedanta is making you realize that you are this absolute consciousness, you're Brahman. But consciousness has different meanings for different people. Hence, we systematically also study what all these mean. So I'll refer to things here and there. If some of you have not been through Tattva Bodha or any other texts with our Sangha, you can ask clarifying questions. If it is deviating too much from the main point we're discussing right now, I request to wait till after the main session. I always leave time for Q&A in the end. But if something is really stopping you from understanding what the context is, please do raise your hand and ask a question. Yeah. And yeah, you can just raise your hand using the reaction here below or unmute yourself and ask. So this verse says, Karturagnya, Kartuhu, which is one who created, Agnya, by the will of the God, by the will of the Creator, Prapyate Phalam, the fruits are received. So basically, the fruits of karma, action, are attained by the will of the Creator. Karma kim param. How can karma, action, be superior? Karma, karmata jadam. Because action is insentient. If you remember, these Purva Mimamsas believe that karma can give them everything. That karma itself gives them fruit, and then there is no creator. And Ramana Maharishi is completely dismissing that belief in the very first verse. So this first verse is actually a prelude to the teaching to refute the misconceptions of the Purva Mimamsas. Their misconception about what gives moksha. And they primarily have a misconception that separates karma action from Bhagavan, the karma phaladata. In the scriptures tell us that every action has a reaction, has some, even science says that, right? Like, so everything that we do will have a fruit. And separating this karma from Bhagavan can be a cause of huge bondage. It can become a shackle. If you don't have the humility to recognize that there is something much beyond your actions, like, right, you can say, oh, I made this big career for myself. I made all this money. I birthed these children, and whatever they are is thanks to me, you know. But there were a lot of other factors which went in for everything that you have. For sure, your own effort was there, but none of us can dismiss this hand of a higher power in what is received, right? And also this, he's dismissing the second limited belief that karma can give limitless results, that there is an eternal heaven or swarga. And you can ask yourself logically, does that make sense? Do we usually find in our experience that something limited can produce something unlimited? Does that make sense? And we also know from experience that what is produced in time get lost in time. You can build a beautiful house, spending a lot of time, energy on it. But over time, that house will deteriorate. It will need further upkeep. And eventually, maybe not in your lifetime, but in your children's lifetime or after that, that house will eventually collapse. It won't last forever. The result of any actions we do are limited in time and place. So this verse is to establish the concept of Bhagavan or Ishvara. Now, those who have not been exposed to Vedanta before might be a bit confused. Is there someone who's attending the class for the very first time? I don't think I see any completely new names. Yeah, so we said we believe in this viewpoint of oneness, of Advaita, which means I am no different from the creator or this created world. I am that absolute consciousness. Now, talking about a separate Bhagavan, Ishvara, seems to bring in duality, does it not? How do we explain this, this seeming contradiction? Would anyone like to give it a shot?
So I think it is basically coming from the fact that Kartu, the main doer, is the Lord or the Self. You know, you are basically that Tattvamasi. So if in that sense we see that, the ego who thinks that we are doing it, it's actually not. We are not the ones who are doing it. It's actually the higher self, which itself is doing it, and that's what is our reality, and that's what we are trying to find. So it's not the action that the ego is doing which is giving us the result. It is just how the overall dispensation is, which is the projection is because of the higher self, the consciousness of the Brahman, which is how the results are coming. So I think it is trying to probably guide in that direction.
So you mentioned the word higher self, right? So the thing is, Vedanta accepts that there is a perception of duality. Even when one becomes enlightened, that perception of duality continues. Right? Ramana Maharishi, even after enlightenment, he could see, he still worshipped Arunachala as Lord Shiva. He could see these other devotees. He could hear their questions and answer them. So all this is duality. Any interaction can happen only in when there is duality. And the goal of Vedanta is only to end this reality that you attach to the duality. So it says, yes, you perceive multiplicity. That is absolutely right. But that is not the ultimate truth. So to help you understand that, technically, we talk about the levels of reality. Right? So the lowest level of reality, called subjective reality or the pratibhasika satyam, is which is completely subjective. So you and I might be looking at the same scenery outside, and it's a bit of a cloudy day. So one might say, oh, what a dreary, cloudy day it is today. And another person might say, oh, what a romantic scene this is with all these clouds wafting past and so on. So we're both looking at the same thing, but we both have a very subjective version of that same reality, right? This is also the realm of, so we call it Jiva Shrishti, what the Jiva created, the reality the Jiva created for himself. And all your dreams also belong to this level of reality. So only you experience your dream. No one else has. This whole dream world comes when you go to sleep and it dissolves when you wake up. And only you've experienced that dream. And while you were experiencing it, it felt completely real. Right? So all this is subjective reality. Pratibhasika satyam. And then there is one level above that we call Vyavaharika Satyam, the transactional level of reality. And that is the things that all of us, a vision of reality, we all share. We can all observe the same things. Both of you, all of you are looking at the same, I mean, it's probably too bright, but if you could see clearly, you'll see the mountains and buildings in the background. Right, and all of you can see this same cup, right, made of clay and something else. And that's the transactional reality. And then, but we are saying that is not the ultimate. There is one more absolute reality which is on above that. So when you see this cup, imagine it was a purely clay cup. Where is the cup itself? So it's made of clay, right? And is there any weight which belongs to the cup but not the clay? If I'm trying to touch the cup itself and I don't want anything to do with the clay, can I touch the cup itself? What am I touching? I'm just touching the clay. So in this limited example, the cup is just a name and form I've given to the clay to understand this experience of the object I'm seeing and to give it a functional utility, because I want to be able to drink from this cup. I can't drink from a lump of clay, right? So that's the name and form that I've superimposed on the clay. And that's the transactional reality. The ultimate reality of this cup is only clay. If the cup were to break, the clay will still remain. Before this cup was ever formed, there was clay. So the ultimate reality of the cup is clay. And similarly, the ultimate reality of you and me and this world we see is Brahman, this absolute consciousness. And this levels of reality, although Vedanta students have been exposed to it, but it's extremely critical to always keep coming back to. Because without that, there's a scope for a lot of confusion. There's also scope for what they call spiritual bypassing, which was a term coined by a Buddhist psychologist. And I find that quite important to talk to in today's day when we are teaching, because when you're trying to realize yourself as this absolute self, as this consciousness, what do you do with all these disturbances and emotions and your wanting to cling on to some people? Do you simply dismiss that? Because no, I'm Brahman. I'm above all this. I don't have any relations. I don't need anything because I'm fullness in itself. Is that what you do? That's what you ultimately do. But there is a journey to that. There's a journey towards that. And you have to be careful not to jump too far ahead. You deal with the disturbance at the level that you currently are at, very humbly. You deal with it at the level of the body, mind, sense. If I'm disturbed right now because my nervous system is dysregulated, I can take a few deep breaths, do some pranayama. They say count 10 if you're angry before you snap at someone. So you manage it however you want. And then at a later stage, you can evaluate that experience. And after sufficiently handling it at the emotional, psychological, vyavaharika, the transactional reality level, if there is readiness, then you can also contemplate on your higher self, on your absolute self. So I'm speaking to students at different stages of inquiry, at different stages of Vedantic study. So take what's meant for you here and try not to generalize it, yes. So that's a big digression, but a necessary one to explain what was God. And I haven't actually explained what is God yet. So in this transactional reality, when there is this perception of duality, so just like you call yourself a jiva, right? You are that absolute consciousness in being observed from this limitation of a body and mind. And you currently associate yourself, like Vicky, you associate as Vicky, Sujit, you might associate as Sujit, right? And when you say who's Vicky or Sujit, it's like you'll say, I'm this many years old, I look a certain way, I'm a man, and so on and so on. I, of course, appreciate you're trying to find your higher identity and claim that higher identity, but we have large parts of those associations with that, right? And we will keep falling back to those associations. And similarly, Ishvara is another projection on a bigger body mind, like more than body mind. Like, so as Spandana, I have certain abilities. I have a certain ability to see, and a cat can probably see 10 times better than me. I have a certain ability to hear, and a dog can hear way better than that. So whatever potential I have in this frame, there is an unlimited potential of that in creation. So this upadhi, we call it this upadhi, this case or limiting adjunct that I'm calling Spandana right now, there is this much bigger upadhi, which has the unlimited potential of everything which exists, which we're calling Ishvara. Yeah. So it's the same consciousness reflected of this upadhi we call Spandana, reflected of this much bigger upadhi, the unlimited upadhi, we call Ishvara. But it is also a superimposition. And when we come to the ultimate inquiry stage, will be negated. So, but there is, in that context, there is a creator, right? So even in this verse, Ramana is basically dismissing the argument that there is no creator. And we're at the end of time. And this verse is still pending. So I'll come back to it next class, but I like to finish on time. So any questions?
Thank you, none at this point.
Thank you. So it would be quite a bit of introduction for the older students. I hope it's still useful. Yes, and we'll continue from next class. So you can say the closing prayers. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate
Dashate
Purnasya
Purnamadaya
Purnamedachyate
Purnamedaya Vishishyate
Om Shanti
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 Hari Om
That's
Tat Sat. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Spandana ji.
If anyone has any questions, you're welcome to stay back.